It is my great pleasure to introduce this roundtable titled Literature and Democracy When Politics Shape Private Life. I will let our guests dwell into the subject, but just would like to remind a quote I have, which is, if you don't take care of politics, politics will take care of you. So it is my great honor, privilege, and happiness to welcome two dear friends today. First, Laure Adler. She is a writer, a journalist, an editor, a radio and TV producer. She was an advisor of François Mitterrand, and she was also an activist because she was kicked off her lycée, high school, in May '68. So thank you very much, Laure, for being with us since the beginning of the anniversary of the bookstore. And Alaa Al Aswany, who is a writer and a dentist, and I think it's very important. And he's also, in a way, an activist, or he is an activist. And so I met, if you allow me to tell the story, yes. So I met Alaa in Cairo when I was cultural counselor of France in Egypt. He was awarded the Arts et Lettres by the French government, and so it was our first meeting, and we became friends in Egypt and then in New York. And he's a very famous writer, one of the most important figures of the world literature. You may have read Jacobian Building, Chicago, because you also lived in Chicago, and you wrote a wonderful book from this experience. And you were one of the most important figure of the intellectual figure of the 2011 revolution in Egypt. And you had a lot of courage in your life. And you wrote a very beautiful book about the revolution in Egypt. So in French, it's J'ai couru vers le Nil. Very beautiful book that I recommend. And so I'm very happy that you are with us tonight.
Thank you
very much.
much
For the friendship. So I'm stopping here and enjoy the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Merci Mohamed d'avoir introduit le travail d'Alaa. J'ai presque plus grand-chose à dire, il a déjà tout dit. Mais je suis très heureuse de retrouver Alaa. Cela fait quelques années que nous nous étions vus. C'était à un moment d'une publication d'un de tes livres. Des personnes ici ne savent pas que tu vis maintenant aux États-Unis parce que tu as été obligé de quitter ton propre pays à cause de problèmes politiques. Est-ce que ta vision de la littérature a changé avec ce déplacement géographique et intellectuel?
So thank you, Mohammed, for introducing Alaa. I have nothing more, I don't have that much more to say, I guess. So I'm very happy we meet again. The last time was a few years ago for the publication of one of your books. Some people here don't know that you've had to leave your home country for political reasons and that you now live in the United States. So could you tell us if your vision of literature has changed with this displacement, both intellectual and geographical?
Well, I was told to answer in English, right? So I obey the rules. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Laure is my friend, and she's a wonderful person and a wonderful activist for feminism. And we know each other we have known each other for a long time, and I'm happy that she has accepted. L'immeuble Jacobien. And I'm happy that she has accepted to be with me tonight. And I owe thanks to many people, to the ambassador of France, Mr. Laurent Billy, et à mon ami, my friend Mohammed, the cultural attaché, and to the people of Albertine, They have been very friendly, very efficient, and to you also. Thank you. Yes, that's a good question. I had to leave because I was just banned from everything. I was banned from writing, banned from any TV appearance, banned from publishing my books, and at some point they began to create problems, not with me, I had enough problems with them, but they began to create problems with my daughters, with my family. And then at this point, I decided to leave. Does my opinion of literature change? No, of course, I would say the opposite is true. I believe more and more in literature. I believe that literature might be a solution for all what we are living now. I believe. Why? Because literature is teaching us to be, not to judge other people, but to try to understand them in a better way. Because literature teaches us that we might be different in our skin color, our culture, our background, our nationalities, but we are basically human beings with the same feelings and the same ambitions and the same suffering. And I believe the more we read literature, we understand literature, the more we will be able to make this world a much better place to live in.
Nous allons d'abord aborder le volet littérature à l'intérieur de ton travail, parce qu'il y a plusieurs disciplines et plusieurs types d'interventions à l'intérieur de ton écriture. Dans le volet littérature, cela a commencé en France avec l'immeuble Yacoubian, qui a inventé un style littéraire à lui tout seul, où à travers l'histoire d'un immeuble, comme le titre l'indique, c'est des gens d'origine sociale, d'origine de générations différentes, avec des niveaux intellectuels différents, et c'est le monde en son entier. Il y a un côté Babylone à l'intérieur de tes livres, et encore plus, et on y reviendra tout à l'heure, dans le dernier qui vient de sortir, là, il y a 2 mois en France, au soir d'Alexandrie. Comment s'est inventé chez toi cet art littéraire à partir d'un lieu souvent géographique, un unique lieu, il y a le monde entier?
So we'll start with the literary chapter in your work, because so many different disciplines and interventions occur in your writing, starting with the Yacubian building, which, if anything, invented an entire literary style on its own, using this building as a kind of Babylon to make all a variety of people from diverse social origins and generations and intellectual backgrounds meet. And so how, and then all the more so with this book that we'll talk about later today, Trees Walk in Alexandria, how does your practice of writing in this way, where a single location becomes the place from which an entire world is to be seen, how was that invented for you?
Well, this is a category in fiction. We call this the place as a main character. And it has been used over and over by many writers like Ivo Andrić, for example, the Yugoslavian Greek writer, the bridge on Drina River. It was used by Naguib Mahfouz. And the assumption in this kind of fiction is that every place has a human history. Accordingly, this room where we are doing this wonderful meeting, you can easily imagine that this room has had a human history. Probably in this room, a very strong and beautiful love story began, or somebody decided to change his life, or somebody decided to file a divorce, or somebody, you know. And for the writer, for the novelist, he has to imagine the human history of a place. And that's exactly what I did in Yacobi building. I lived in this building. It's a real building that still exists downtown Cairo. And I lived in this building. And I had, I don't know if you know, but I am a dentist too, you know. I'm here, of course, as a writer, not as a dentist. But if you ever have, if you ever need any advice about your teeth, I really can help, you know. I studied dentistry here in American University of Illinois, so I had a good education as a dentist. So I had my dental clinic in this building, and I lived in this building for years because my late father, who was a lawyer, had his office in the building, and I felt all the time the human history of the building. I felt all the time that at some point I will write about this building, and that's exactly what I did. I must say something here quickly, because I don't know if you know, but I have had a huge success in France. France is among the countries where my books have been very successful. And I must thank a very dear friend of mine, because she's here tonight, my dear friend Françoise Nissen, because she and her late father and her late husband presented me in France when nobody literally knew me. No one single French reader. So I believe that my success in France, I have partners, and she is a very important partner. Thank you.
It's true. Mais c'est parce que tu étais à la fois dentiste et écrivain. Ça nous a intrigués, nous les Français. It's the reason why. I think so. Comment tu qualifierais l'universalisme? Est-ce que c'est une catégorie intellectuelle importante pour toi?
How would you qualify universalism? Is it an important intellectual category for you?
No, she said something about being a dentist.
First, it's because you're a dentist that we were all intrigued.
Well, that's, you know, people usually don't love their dentists, you know. They appreciate the dentist, but the dentistry is not that popular. And of course, when I say to my readers, you know, it has been very useful for me to be a dentist because I listen to the people and I know. They have always one single question. How could you listen to the people while their mouth is open? And of course, here I must explain, I'm a different dentist, you know. People come to my clinic and we talk and we become friends. And every now and then, I take care of their teeth. So my place is a dental clinic, but not only a dental clinic. And I remember a female critic in Egypt that wrote a wonderful review about one of my books. And she said, "You stay practicing?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I have some problems." I said, "Yes, of course." I gave her an appointment. And she said, "Honestly, you know, I'm really scared." And I said, "Of course, one is scared in a dental clinic." And she said, "No, more." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you're such a good writer that I'm scared because while fixing my teeth, you might have an idea of a short story, and then you will destroy my mouth. And I said, I had to tell her that this will never be the case. What is universalism? It's literature. Literature is the language of humanity. When I write about an Egyptian character, a female Egyptian character, in my novel Chicago, for example, she was brilliant and she had a scholarship, despite the fact that her family, of course, conservative family, how could she travel by herself? And she did, and she came to Chicago, and she had a kind of cultural conflict. When I sign this novel in Norway or Denmark, and you find a female reader who would tell you, I absolutely understand the suffering of this young Egyptian lady. I believe this is what literature is all about.
Alors, tu as cité tout à l'heure Ivo Andrić et Naguib Mahfouz. Et effectivement, les deux se conjuguent pour peut-être définir ta littérature. Les personnages, qui sont peut-être des échos de personnes existant réellement, ont ceci de particulier dans l'ensemble de tes romans, c'est qu'ils ne sont ni bons ni mauvais. Il n'y a aucun jugement moral. Ils ont tous leurs faiblesses, ils ont tous leurs forces. Cette composition psychologique est-elle importante à tes yeux pour définir ta qualité de romancier? L'absence de jugement?
Absolument. Mais j'attends la traduction.
So you cited Ivo Andrić and Naguib Mahfouz before, and it's true that we can conjugate both to try and describe your writing or your stem as an author. And so in your characters, which may very well be echoes of people you've met, have all this in particular, that they're neither good nor bad. They all have their weaknesses and all their strengths, but there's no moral judgment as to their temperament and character. Would you say this psychological composition is important to you and to your writing, the absence of judgment?
Absolutely. And now we are face to face with one of the most important roles of literature. As I told you, literature doesn't, the assumption in literature that nobody is bad 100% or good 100%. And of course, the soap opera is always, for some reason, presenting two colors, black and white, people who are really nice, almost angels, and people who are really very bad. Literature goes deeper. And here I have an example, a very good example. One of the greatest novelists of all time is Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Fyodor Dostoevsky was sent to Siberia in prison for 4 years for political reasons. And he lived with criminals. He was a political prisoner, but he lived with people who did horrible crimes. 4 years. And he wrote one of the classics. In English, it is called The House of the Dead. And in this wonderful novel, he presented the human aspect of the criminals, which absolutely is meeting the role of literature. And I remember a scene, and I think it should be, I teach creative writing, so I teach this scene. In this novel, two criminals, the scene between two criminals and the narrator. And the narrator most probably is Dostoevsky himself. One criminal was dying, and the other criminal, when he found that his colleague is dying, so he began to cry. And then the narrator asked the crying criminal, "Why do you cry?" And here is the answer. I cry because he was talking about the dying one. He, had a mother to cry for him when he dies. I presented this. You will notice that the sentence is very strong. And if you try to find out the secret of strength, you will realize that what is very strong in this sentence is the word to, T-O-O. Because what does it mean to? It means we are criminals. We committed crimes. But we are two human beings. And I said once in a lecture that in this little two, you will find the role of literature.
Alors, puisque tu parles de tout, moi je vais te parler de MeToo. Parce que à l'intérieur de tes romans, le statut des femmes est absolument extraordinaire. Et encore dans le dernier roman, c'est une femme qui est au centre. C'est elle qui détient les clés de l'humour, de l'intelligence, du contournement, du non-affrontement avec ce qui fait mal. Et c'est le cas aussi dans tous tes autres romans. Es-tu un écrivain féministe?
Oui, absolument. Ouais.
Since you speak of two, I'll ask you about Me Too, because it's true that all of your novels, all of the female characters have extraordinary statuses, and here too, a woman is at the center. She holds the key to humor, to intelligence, to the conturnment, so as not to have to get on headstrong with the hostile force. So, would you say you're a feminist writer?
Yeah, absolutely. I am. And I'm proud of being a feminist writer. And I believe that there is a cause, a real cause in the woman's problems everywhere. The West is no exception. Of course, we have in Egypt, we have a dictatorship that makes everybody suffer, you know. And we have this, everybody's oppressed in Egypt unless you are linked. You have the context with the regime, but you have people who are oppressed twice. Once, like anybody, and a special, you know, oppression. So you have the woman, and you have the minorities, the Egyptian Christians. Accordingly, yes, of course, and thank you for noticing that I present the woman in a different way. I don't believe in this stereotype image about the woman who is really very weak and she needs the man, you know, and she cannot decide for herself. Not only I don't believe in that, and not only I believe that this is stereotype that has been promoted for decades and centuries, while it's absolutely not true, I would believe in the opposite, in the contrary. I believe that the woman is a very strong creature. And if we go to statistics in Egypt, for example, 1/3 of the poor families are sponsored by women. You have the single mother who's taking care of her kids, and that the husband just disappeared. Every 3 women in Egypt, you have 1 who is sponsoring her family and not the husband. So I believe in that. And of course, when you write, you don't have these ideas in mind. You try to find a character. But of course, probably subconsciously, your characters will meet your image or your opinion about women. So I respect women. I really defend the rights, and I believe that's a great cause to defend.
Au centre de cette galaxie de personnes, car ce ne sont pas des personnages, nous, lectrices et lecteurs, nous y croyons tellement que ce ne sont plus des personnages, ce sont des gens réels que tu as peut-être côtoyés au début des années 60, période pendant laquelle se déroule ton dernier roman, Au soir d'Alexandrie. Il y a ce personnage extraordinaire qui s'appelle Chantal et qui s'intéresse à tout, c'est-à-dire aux choses très importantes, comme d'abord l'amour, le sexe, mais elle ne s'intéresse pas du tout à la politique. Elle refuse de s'intéresser à la politique. Pourquoi tu lui fais penser que la politique, c'est pas important, alors que tu penses le contraire?
At the center of this galaxy of people, and people not characters, because as readers we become so involved with them that we really, really believe that these are people you might have met in the early 60s when this last book is set. There's this character, Chantal, who is an incredible woman who's interested in everything, things important and less important. She cares about love, she cares about sex, but she doesn't care about politics. She refuses to care about politics. Why did you make her believe this and look in this direction when you don't believe the same yourself?
Thank you for this question, because it will enable me to explain how it works in writing. I create the characters, and this takes really a lot of work. And then at some point, I believe the characters do exist. And when I believe that, then I will realize that I have a novel, and it's about time then I'm going to finish this novel. So I take my characters, I know everything about them, everything. And this is how you create a character, to imagine everything. You know, their habits, if they even smoke cigarettes, or what kind of cigarettes count, you know. So if you smoke, I know that most Americans do not smoke, but if you smoke Marlboro Red, you are a person, and if you smoke Gitan, you are another person, and if you smoke extra light Marlboro, you are a third person. Of course, everybody has to stop smoking, but this is not my talk. So at some point, I feel that they do exist. And I push them in a trip. And after 2 or 3 chapters, I lose control. They become independent. They decide for themselves. Accordingly, the fact that Chantal is not interested in politics, I did disagree with her. And I believe that she's such an intellectual person, and she cannot just ignore the political situation, but she did. And at some point, I try to convince my characters, right? But usually it doesn't work. Well, my characters are very stubborn. Accordingly, Chantal made very good things and made stupid things too, the bêtises, but she is herself.
Alors, autre volet de ton travail d'écriture, il y a aussi l'arrière-fond politique. On parlait tout à l'heure de l'immeuble Yacoubian, l'arrière-fond politique, il est très précis, il est très rigoureux. Cela n'est pas une atmosphère, cela est un sujet à part entière qui se déploie à travers la création de tes personnages. Soir d'Alexandrie, idem. Cette période de Nasser, tu la décris extrêmement bien. Est-ce que tu te considères comme un écrivain historico-politique ou comme un écrivain de fiction?
So another important part in your writing is the political backdrop of each one of your novels. In Yacubian Building, we see that it is not an atmosphere, but a subject proper. It's precise and rigorous and gets displayed through the creation of your characters. In Trees Walking in Alexandria, just the same. You describe this period of Nasser's rule with such precision. Do you consider yourself a historical political writer or a fiction writer?
Thank you for the question again. And I believe that, I'm published in Italy by Feltrinelli, which is a big publishing house that was founded by a great Italian intellectual, Gian Giacomo Feltrinelli. And Gian Giacomo Feltrinelli said, quote, I only know two kinds of novels, the dead novels and the living novels. And my job is to publish the living novels. And I absolutely agree. I think that literature is a life on the papers that is similar to our daily life, but more profound, more significant, and more beautiful. Accordingly, all what exists in our daily life will exist in the novel. So I don't believe that there is, I might write in historical or social. I try to present a life on the papers, and it will include everything.
En fait, tu es en train de nous dire qu'être écrivain, c'est être créateur d'un monde. Et à chaque fois que tu écris un livre, tu crées un autre monde. Un monde entier. Avec l'architecture, avec la météorologie, avec la psychologie, avec l'amour, avec la sexualité. À chaque fois, c'est un nouveau monde.
So are you saying to us that the work of a writer is a work of world building, and that every book creates a new world, a whole world with its architecture, its weather currents, its psychology, its sexuality, a whole world every time?
Yes, absolutely. This is my experience, and I have been writing fiction for years now, probably for 40 years or 35 years. So I can claim I have experience, and yes, it's exactly that. I believe that I am creating another world that is similar to our daily life, but it's more profound, more significant, and more beautiful. And as I said, at some point you are, as a writer, you become surprised because you have no control on the novel. You have no control on the characters. And I remember in Jacobean Building, there was an old man who fell in love with a young woman, and they were arrested by the Egyptian police. And of course, usually this is what happens to everybody who is arrested by the Egyptian police. They were humiliated and they were insulted. And then they got released, and then the old man told the Busaina, the lady, young lady, we must forget that. You must forget what happened. And then she said, I have been always an unlucky person. I write very early in the morning, myself. I wake up at 6. I write from 7 to 1. And my wife has been supporting me and taking care of me. Even she makes coffee for me, and I'm very happy she's here. Thank you. Thank you very much, Amen. And I kept thinking the whole day that this young lady has been really unlucky. And she has suffered without doing anything. And then I slept, and then in the morning I opened the computer. It was a computer by that time. And I realized that she and the old man got married overnight. And I was very happy. And then I went out of my office. It was 6:45. And Iman was doing the coffee for me, thank you. And she said, what? Because I said, they got married. To that extent, at some point, it is no more your drama, it is no more your word. Even if you had created this word, it becomes independent.
Dernière question avant de laisser la place aux questions du public. Troisième volet de ton œuvre, c'est les livres de théorie politique, de théorie sur l'extrémisme religieux, sur ce qui se passe dans le monde. Que penses-tu de la situation ?
Quelle situation?
Celle que tu veux, celle qui t'intéresse, celle qui existe, pas celle que tu imagines.
Last question, before we open up to audience questions. The third important sort of part of your writing is the theoretical writing, the political theory, books on religious extremism. Can you speak to us a little bit of the situation? What situation? Whichever situation you want to speak to.
Well, I would say what I believe. I believe in the human value, the value of the human life. I believe that nobody has the right to claim that he or she is better than anybody else. I believe that we can make this world a much better place with justice and humanity. And of course, the interpretation of this, I believe, is very clear.
Qui veut poser des questions? C'est toujours la première question la plus difficile.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
My name is Abdullah. I study theater at UC Berkeley, and I'm originally from Saudi Arabia. I am a big fan of a category in literature, which is alternate history. And when I look at Egypt, I always wonder how would Egypt would look like if the military coup did not happen in 2012. So I wanted to ask, have you thought about writing an alternate history novel of how Egypt would have looked like if that military coup did not happen?
Thank you very much, but I think we disagree basically, because I don't believe when you say military coup, it means you had really a democratic system, and at some point it was overthrown. In my opinion, that was not the case. The brothers, the Islamists, had an alliance with the army. And you cannot imagine that any army, especially the Egyptian army, would organize fair elections. You know, the Egyptian army, or some of the Egyptian army, were killing the protesters in the street. And you cannot imagine that the soldiers who were killing the protesters in the street on Wednesday, for example, Saturday, they will have free elections, and they will allow results they don't like. So what happened was a conflict of power. It was, in my opinion, it was not a coup d'etat because there was no democratic system in the first place. Mr. Morsi, if you are referring to Mr. Morsi, the late Mr. Morsi was chosen by the brothers and approved by the army, you know. So we have this difference. Yes?
I have a question about...
She will get you there.
Thank you. I have a question about what comes in terms of literature you're working on now for the future. What's your next project? I know you don't talk much about it, but just give us an idea if you could.
I don't talk at all. Not much, but anyway, for you, my dear friend, I will say a few words, right? I believe I'm always interested in the human experience. And the idea of sacrificing, and this happened in the Egyptian, at least in the Egyptian history many times, when somebody would stand for his or her principles and sacrifice for that, right? And then at some point she will feel, or he will feel, that the sacrifice was not appreciated by the people she was defending, you know. And we find a very good example in Egypt, unfortunately. You have the young revolutionaries who are either exiled or in prison, and many times you find the masses in Egypt against them. And I tried to figure out why. I describe this in my novel, The Automobile Club, and I believe that the revolution, and you find this even in my, J'ai couru vers le Nil in French, and The Republic of False Truth in English, the same novel, that some people get adapted to the dictatorship, and they have their plans, and they have their words. So when the young revolutionaries try to change this, they are against them because they don't feel secure. They want to stay in what they know. We know that the dictator, you know, we know the oppression, we know he's rigging the elections, but we don't care. You know, I want to work and to raise my kids. But if you will overthrow the president, I will try to, they will come against you. And I found this, some of the most miserable aspects of the social change is that you are defending some people and you pay the price, and you find those people, those very people you are defending against you. So I am in this zone, yes. Thank you.
Given what you just said, would you say that your...
The microphone is good.
Given what you just said, would you say that your books are less popular in Egypt than they would be in France, like you mentioned before?
No. I have been lucky enough to be widely read in Egypt, even after Mr. Sisi arrived to power. I was banned, as I said, even from the publishing anything. But the problem is they have, the generals who are ruling now in Egypt, they have the mentality of the 40s, you know. So they believe they can ban a book, which is simply no more possible. So my book is circulating, you know, this book in Arabic everywhere online, and they cannot control it. Thank you.
Thank you. This might sound like a flippant question, but I mean it very seriously. It sounds like you were a dentist before you were a writer, and I'm wondering what it was, or if it was, any connection between looking in and thinking about people's mouths and teeth that led you to be a writer, and how you let both of those inhabit your life.
That's a wonderful question. Well, no, as a matter of fact, my father was a writer and lawyer. And then he advised me to have another profession, because he told me being a writer in a dictatorship is very risky, because they will try to buy you and to impose on you what you should write, and you will have no choice. So if you have another profession, then you'll be independent. And that's exactly what happened. The fact that I got inspired by the teeth, I like the idea. It might be true, you know, especially the wisdom tooth. Yes. But I got inspired by the people, really. You know, in this novel, the latest novel, you will find a cement factory workers. I come from in a bourgeois family, so this is very far from me. But I worked as a dentist in this factory, and I realized from the very first week I am miserably underpaid, you know. It was nothing. But I kept working for this factory for 6 years. Why? To get the experience. And of course, being a dentist means receiving people, very different people. So I can tell, for example, from the very beginning, what kind of person is my patient, you see? And if there is a couple, I would feel if they are married or not married. And if they are not married and they get married while I'm treating their teeth, it's unbelievable the difference that will happen, you know. When they were engaged or they were not married, there was a mood. And when they get married, I feel totally another mood. One of my projects is to write about my dental experience, not with the teeth, but with the people.
مساء الخير. I'm here. مساء الخير. So we are here in the oldest democracy of the world, and the people just voted someone in who, let's say, is flirting with authoritarianism, despite all the warnings. You come from a place where, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with an authoritarian regime. Do certain things that are happening now trigger like warning bells? Would you like see dangers because you have lived in such a system? Can you see any perils, or is it, you know, making you maybe especially sensitive and afraid of what could come now?
No, I'm not afraid. I'm concerned. You know what? What is a very positive aspect of democracy is the right to make mistakes, right? And then you elect somebody, or you elect somebody because you didn't want to elect the other person, right? And then you will pay for that for 4 years, but you will have the opportunity to get rid of the wrong choice. And this is what democracy is all about. We don't have this in Egypt. We have only one president, and he was still in power until the end of his life. And he is doing everything for us. He is voting for us, deciding for us. So, you know, we don't have to bother. You know, it's the election day in Egypt is a holiday. So this is a difference, yes.
We have time for 2 more questions.
مساء الفل. I'm here, out of the room, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you mentioned the oppression of women in Egypt and the battles that they should drive. I'm born and raised in Alexandria in Egypt. And my question is, how do you read the current social scene in Egypt? Because during this economic and social situation, I'm confused, and I'm trying to read it because we see that there is no more social class, middle social class, and it's only the very, like, there is a gap, very poor people and people in fenced compounds, and we used to have a huge middle class that absorbing all the clashes between the system and the regime and the people. So, as you said, you are either aligned with the system or you are not aligned with the system, and this is how you will not get your chances. and I'm trying to read it outside because I don't know if you feel you are missing a lot. It's been 3 years I'm here, and I feel I'm missing a lot. Every time I go to Egypt, I feel like there is like many things happen I'm missing, and I want to ask you how you being far now, how you feel the temper of the society, and how if you want to write about the current society, you will write about it without feeling the current temper of people in the streets.
That's a very, it's a stratified question. Yeah, number one, you know, when you are out of Egypt, it might be more useful for you as a fiction writer because you see the scene while you're not really literally involved in the scene. And this, I'm not the unique case. For example, if you remember that Gabriel Garcia Marquez left Colombia at the age of 20, Tayyip Saleh left Sudan in the age of 18, and many other writers, and they wrote all the time about their country. So I'm not worried about that. How do you see the scene? I have a book called The Dictatorship Syndrome. It's essays, and it's not fiction. And I try to understand the phenomena of dictatorship in the 20th century. And the book is available in English, French, and some other languages like Greek, Italian. But I must tell you that Mr. Sisi is a unique case. Mr. Sisi is somebody that it's very hard, I think that it's very hard to find a dictator like him because he's not only, he has all the, you know, the tools of dictatorship, but he speaks to God. He speaks to God. He said that. Huh? We all speak to God in a way, right? But he has some advantage that God speaks to him. And we don't have this advantage, of course. So he said, yes, and he said that God created him as a physician. It's true that he never studied medicine, but this is not important. He said that as soon as I see any problem, I analyze the problem and I see the solution. Of course, this is unique. You don't find, you know, you have dictators who are, you know, doing terrible things, but their self-image, the way they think about themselves, is not like that. We can, of course, see that the results and the situation in Egypt are not really very much supporting the assumption that God is supporting him. But inside this, we don't have to forget that there was, after the revolution, a kind of liberation, cultural liberation. You know, the 60% of Egyptians are under the age of 30. And this generation made the revolution. Accordingly, you had this liberation of thoughts and a new vision of life, and of course, the cause of the woman inside this. And that's why I'm optimistic, because the change made by the revolution has happened, and it is irreversible. And this is something that the current regime doesn't understand. That the revolution might not happen, but if it happens, it will continue.
Okay. I guess I'm the last question. Dr. Alaa, thank you very much for an interesting talk. I guess my question is about the politics of publishing in general. We spoke a bit about the universalism of literature and the human experience. However, the publishing world divides writers. So you have, which has a lot of American and Eurocentrism. So you have writers who are part of world literature, which means that the core is the works by European or American authors, and the rest are lumped under the big category of world authors or world literature. I'd like to know what you think about this category and whether you think you can transcend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karim. I believe that the Arab literature hasn't been presented correctly in the West yet. And why? Because who decides to translate any Arabic text or novel? The translation is mainly in the hands of Orientalists. And of course, I'm not against them. But what's happening is that they have the control. They decide to translate this novel and not the other novel. And the problem here is that they care about the topic more than the art. So if you write a novel that is a miserable novel, null. But you talk about a cause that they want this cause, they are supporting, it will be translated. And even when they translate, they don't translate to the readers. They translate to the academic circles. So you have many writers who were translated and you never find the books. Why? Because the books are in the Oriental Studies departments and it's not available for the readers. If I may say that I have had the success, is that I have been introduced to the readers in 37 languages as a writer who happened to be Egyptian. I was not introduced in the folkloric scene. There is a folkloric scene. Is that you go to the book fair and then you buy your favorite writers and then you go to support the handicapped. Who are the handicapped? 10 or 15 Arab writers. Here, you don't care very much about the art. You try to support these people, you know. So I'm absolutely against this system. And I believe if you present to the Western readers one good writer is much more important than translating 12 writers in the academic departments.
I know there are many more questions tonight, and I apologize for cutting it short, but we have to keep on schedule. We have more events coming up. So I wanted to thank Dr. Alaa Al Aswany, Laura Adler, and their interpreter, Asya Turkiye-Zuberman, for being with us tonight. It was a fascinating conversation. Just one more note. Dr. Alaa Al Aswany will be signing books in the second floor of the bookstore. So this way, down the hall.